What's up, guys? It's me, JellyKnees, and we're talking about the map today. We're just going to hop right into it. We're going to have a background of just the map images cycling through, and then a little bit later, I'm going to go through each image individually and talk about some of the little things that we notice here and there. But let's get right into it. And wrong button. There we go. So, first off, the map has changed from what we last knew about it. It's no longer going to be the complete like cake layer stack vertically on top of each other of the lanes. Instead, they're going to be more staggered. So if one lane's here, the other lane's going to be off to the side just slightly, and then the third lane will be higher than that off to the other side, which we'll have to see how that plays out. I think I was upset about the change at first, but I think the more I think about it, the more it grows on me at the same time. Kind of the reason they did this was there was performance issues apparently from having them stacked vertically on top of each other, and this supposedly fixes those performance issues. Which, if it's better performance, but it runs better, I think that's a completely valid reason to change the map. And they said that they're willing to look into it more in the future if they can understand how to get the performance better on a cake layer style map, because that's something they still want to do. Now, in order to travel to the lanes, because they're not connected and they're not vertically stacked anymore, they're going to have teleporters from the bases to each lane, and then they're also going to have cannons strewn about that make you land at set locations on one of the other lanes. The current naming structure that they're going with is the Void, Ice, and Fire lanes, corresponding with the boss or mini boss that is on that lane. So the Fire and Ice Wyvern, and then a Tropos, which is a kind of a Void type boss. The verticality of the map, being that the lanes are so separated, means that there is going to be fall damage between the lanes, and it's going to be based on whether or not you were in an in-combat state prior to falling. If you were in a fight with somebody and you jump off the ledge to try and get away, you will take fall damage. But if you're just doing it to rotate from fire lane to void lane, then you will be able to do that without taking any fall damage in theory. That is subject to change. It depends kind of how it feels. And they also didn't get into any of the damage numbers as well. So we don't know if you're going to die if you're in combat and jump, or if it'll be half your health or a quarter your health or whatever that may be. So the lanes are each going to have their own jungle layouts, and the lane itself is going to be mirrored from each other for the fire and ice lanes, and then it's going to be asymmetric for the void lane. So it'll be really interesting to get used to. Some lanes are mirrored, some lanes are asymmetric, in order to get the pathing down. And you'll see in one of the images we look at later that the pathing through the jungle looks like it's going to take a lot of learning to get used to, in order to know those paths and know which one to take to go where, for the cannons and all the things like that. The lanes themselves will have 3 towers per team leading back towards the base. Once you get to the base, you'll have to defeat a spire. They didn't say if these spires would do damage to you one way or another, so I'm not sure about that. But once you defeat the spire, you will get the super-powered Sky Slayer minions for your minion waves. So that gives them the hovering down the lane and extra damage, and I would assume extra speed as well. And then once you get past those spires, you have to face the Elder. Now, the Elder is kind of the base boss, that kind of like Smite, where you have to defeat an enemy in the base that is very strong, has multiple sets of attacks, kind of like everything else in Ethereal, and will be able to deal massive damage to single targets, or do a decent amount of damage to AoE targets as well. If you watched the Extra Life stream, or the gameplay from the Extra Life, the little boss that we had to fight at the end of each of the lanes, that's what the Elder is going to look like in theory. I've never seen that asset before. They looked great, and they did a ton of damage. So I would expect that that's going to be a very difficult thing to do, that you can't just run into the base by yourself and get that done. Other thing they mentioned about the map is that there will be certain locations that are only accessible to some members of your team. And I would assume that that means certain classes on your team. That there will be one-way paths that once you reach the dead end, only certain characters will be able to progress either up, down, or through that dead end in order to get to the next path over. So it'll be very interesting to see when the game comes out how many people accidentally roam into this dead end and isn't one of those classes, and have to navigate their way out or get caught there, and they've no choice but to either jump off like the side if it's there, or if the they get caught out, it's going to force a fight between them and whoever catches them. I think it's going to be a really cool, like little thing that we can expect from the game, and it kind of rewards those class passives that we definitely know about. All right, and let's get into the images themselves right here. So this is just kind of the basic image that they released with the fun fact for the map, and just kind of showing what it looks like. You've got the path running down the center here, as well as some vegetation growing all around. It looks like you might have a path up above here. I don't know if that's going to be accessible or not to to people other than the Sky Slayers and the Reapers, but we'll have to wait and see for that. And I'm also very curious to see what of this terrain is destructible by the Berserkers, which I think will be very interesting, but fairly generic image here. Now we have this image, which Mangoose and I talked about on Enter the Ether. We've got the torches here. I presume that this is probably a lane on this side of the map. But we also have a torch up here in the top left leading to this log, which looks like it's leading somewhere else as well. The thing that'll be really interesting is if Berserkers can destroy that log to block this lower path, or to keep people from being able to traverse across up into somewhere else on this top right area. Nothing else much to see here, or either they can destroy the trees or pull a rock out of the wall and place it in that pathway instead. I think it would be very cool to see and really change the dynamics of the map throughout the entire game. We have the image of the river here. It looks like we're probably standing right in the middle of the mid lane, because we can see one of the lanes floating here, and it kind of goes off into the distance a little bit. Looks like this is just where your jungle paths are going to cross into the river, and that you'll be able to see the mid lane from that direction as well. Now, I'm very curious to see, with how wide this river is, if you're going to be slowed at all when you walk through it, or if there's going to be any kind of factors that limit or help you while you're running through this water, as opposed to running on the land. This looks like it's an image further down of that river, just kind of we've got the rapids here, more pathing into the jungle, it looks like, on a couple sides. You can already see here that there's like little slight variations in verticality in the map itself, that not only does the river kind of fall down here, and it's not just a slope. Like, you see these branches sticking out of the ground, like the roots of the trees and the rocks and everything. So it's going to be very interesting to see even just slight differences in verticality inside the map and the lanes themselves. So this looks like the inside of Atropos' cave, and I don't know if this was added since the GIF came out of Atropos, because it seemed kind of dark, or if that footage was just taken before this was added to the map. But I think that that's what this is. With the purple coloring, it kind of matches his aesthetic, so maybe this is how you summon Atropos to be able to fight him, or something among those lines. I'll be very curious to see what this little trunk is and what it does and what effect it has on wherever this is. But like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the inside of Atropos' cave. Now, this little thing is blowing my mind, and I can't figure out what it is. Mangoose and I talked about it on Enter the Ether. He thought it was one of the teleporters, and I originally thought it was one of the cannons. But we'll notice in a later image, there's only one of these on the map, and it's directly opposite Atropos on the Void Lane. So if you cut the Void Lane in half, you'll have Atropos on one side and this on the other side, so it's clearly got some kind of larger significance than just being a teleporter or a cannon of some kind. But the interesting thing is that I did some digging, and there was also a YouTube comment on that Enter the Ether episode that mentioned this image. This is something that they put out back in February about a team objective that wasn't just killing monsters. So I'm very curious as to what this is. Now, when you save this image, it's called an obelisk. And looking here, it's got that same kind of several ring shape. It's missing the spikes, and I don't know if that's because the one in-game isn't finalized, or if they since have changed it to not have the spikes and just be the clean 3-ring Stargate looking idea. But this gold beam, it's definitely something bigger than just a teleporter or a cannon. um, that it'll be really interesting to see what this does and how it pertains to helping your team out throughout the game. We also notice here that there's some myth standing right here. And this is not a myth that I'm familiar with in any way, shape, or form. None of the images that we've seen released before about myths, or even like hints about myths, come anywhere to looking like this. So it's either a myth we haven't heard about, and or it's an overseer, which is entirely possible, which could be how they tie the overseers into the game with the obelisk. It'll be very interesting to see what they end up doing on that front. But so we've got a surprise myth here of some kind and this obelisk that we have no idea what the functionality is. The gold beam makes me think that it's some kind of gold buff for your team, but it could be like a capture the flag, or I mean a king of the hill type deal in the game that you might have to go there as a team and keep control over. But it'll be very interesting to see nevertheless. Then we've got our final image here, which is of kind of a top-down view of the map. And this, I can go into more detail about what I was talking about before. So we know that the fire lane is here because we've got the fire wyvern cave over here. And it shows here, you can see kind of the torches in the distance. But you've got some weird openings here that I don't know if these are the cannon landing areas or if there's something there that we just can't see because of the distance. Because if you look, it looks like several things aren't loaded because it's so far. Like the bases, I assume, will be more done than they are. And you can't really see like any camps or anything like that. And I think it's just the distance that we're at from here. But you've got these weird landing pad areas on each and every lane. So you've got the fire lane, and on the left side, you see there's that landing pad area. And that's what I'm assuming they are, is the landing areas for those cannons. And you've got all of these paths winding through the jungle with the main lane somewhere in here, which is just nuts. Like, I can't believe that like it's this complicated just on one of these floating lanes. Then when you drop down to the void lane, you can see that what I was talking about. This is that obelisk on the opposite end of where Atropos' cave is. And then you've got the bases on either side with the lane kind of almost very closely to a straight shot all the way across the map. And you can see tons of winding paths in there as well, with several of those open areas in the same kind of feeling of landing pads, or maybe there's something we just don't know about yet that's hidden there. And I'm really curious to find out what those are. And then we've got our ice lane finally, with the ice wyvern, some more jungle paths, more open spots it looks like, and the lane somewhere in there as well. The curious thing looking at this is it looks like both lanes, both the fire and ice lane, might have the actual lane itself almost right at the mouth of the wyvern entrance, which I'm not sure how I feel about. And to me, it shouldn't be that I can just glance over and see if someone's taking the wyvern. I should have to go move a little bit or drop a ward there or something like that. But we don't know for sure that that's how the lanes are set up. We just have to wait and see when the game comes out. But I'll be very curious to see how that works. The other thing I'm noticing about the ice wyvern cave specifically is that there's this opening in the top. And it looks like it peers down right into the center. That to me indicates that Reapers, anyone that can get up there, but specifically Reapers and Sky Slayers that can climb or fly, might be able to drop in from above and surprise enemy teams that are taking it, or try and steal, or just kind of do some kind of surprise to jump in there and attempt to steal the wyvern or something like that, which I think opens up a lot of possibilities. And I'm curious what the other classes have that could maybe do the same thing or something very similar on these. We did talk about in the monsters video that it looked like there were 3 entrances and 2 of them looked blocked off by rocks. So maybe it's the Reapers and Sky Slayers can get in from above and the Berserkers can create new openings on the sides in order to maximize the effectiveness for your team, which will be really interesting. The one thing I don't notice on here is I don't see the cannons themselves, and maybe, like I said before, they're removed just because of the distance that we're at in this photo. But you can also notice that the void lane, being right here in the center, is the lowest, being the furthest away from the camera. Then we've got the fire lane, and then the ice lane is the highest. So it's completely offset. The fire and ice lane are not equal height above the void lane, and it will be very interesting to see the interactions of getting from lane to lane and the rotation times on everything like that. But guys, that's all I have for the map. I would love to hear your comments about anything that I talked about here, anything about your thoughts about the map as well. But really, I'm really curious if any of you have ideas about what the obelisk could do or be, or what any of that interaction might look like. Because I'm completely stumped on that one. I don't even have any tinfoil theories. I got next to nothing on this one, guys. But I appreciate you guys hanging out. Make sure to hit subscribe and the like button if you appreciate this content and want to see more of it. And we'll be back with another video tomorrow talking about something a little suspicious that I noticed in the fun facts. So guys, make sure not to miss that. Hit subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.